Hello everyone, my name is Jesse, and before you watch any more of this video, stop. This video is loaded with spoilers, story spoilers of all kinds, so you've been warned. And with that being said, this is Jesse, and this is the return of VGM Vibes with the 9th episode. Probably the biggest thing I've ever worked on in a very long time. This took like 2 months to make. And this is all boss themes. So everyone loves boss themes. A couple of disclaimers I want to say because I know people are going to mention them. Number one, this was about 4 times as much work as normal. Normally the VGM Vibes episodes are about 15 songs. That's what I liked. It's like a nice sweet spot for me. This one has about 65. So yeah. With that being said, there's going to be songs here that you're probably expecting and are not going to see. Where are they? Blah, blah, blah. The way this one is, it's going to be mostly my experiences with boss themes growing up and songs I discovered on the channel or games that I played myself, and a couple of guest spots and also community votes. The next time I return to a boss theme episode, whenever that'll be, that one is going to be mostly community based, almost entirely community based, so you can look forward to that. And the other last thing I have to say is that since there's so many songs on here, I just got to keep it moving. So I'm not going to talk too much about them. If I know something about them, I'll talk about it. But you know, a lot of these I have not experienced. Some I have. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a mixed bag all over the place. Thank you to all the guests that will be featured here. With that all said, let's get into the most iconic part in video games for a lot of people, and that's boss music, beginning with the first boss song I've ever heard in my entire life right now. Starting this list off strong is the first official boss theme I ever encountered in my life, somewhere around 4 or 5 years old on the Sega Genesis, is the boss theme from Sonic 1, which is a whipping contrast from this jolly, iconic song we just heard called Green Hill Zone. And I just remember that it just stood out to me so much as a child because of the bass and just the kind of dun 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 dun. And the cool thing about this song is that it's only like 22 seconds or something like that, which is funny because most of the bosses in Sonic can last about 22 seconds, so they kind of cooked with that one. And Masato Nakamura was kind of responsible for me even getting into VGM, one of the reasons I'm even here. So, of course, we had to put this in here. A big shout out to the second game's boss theme too. Dun, 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 dun. But we must move on to the next phase of my life, the last boss theme I encountered, which is also going to kick off the first segment of this video, which I didn't mention in the intro. This video is going to have blocks of themes, and the next 6 songs are going to be games with a bit of a dark aesthetic. So from the first boss theme I experienced to the latest. The next song on this list is a song called Battle Fiend from Shin Megami Tensei 5. This is something I experienced in the demo of Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, which I just finished playing, and I cannot wait to return to the full game later on this summer. And this was my first experience with a fiend. It was the Matador, and I was really proud of myself because the whole chat was like, oh, you're under-leveled, you're not going to beat it. And well, I did, because I don't know, I pay attention to stuff, and it was super fun, and apparently that character is like a returning character. He's kind of a nuisance. But the thing about this song that really stood out to me, it was the latest edition that I put in here. So I didn't originally have it in the list, but then when I beat that part of the game, I was like, I am putting that in there. And the thing about it, Shin Megami Tensei music is just that it's so bizarre, just like the game. It's really weird, but it fits so well, and I really love it for that. I think that things like this, songs like this, can really kind of motivate you and push you to finish, because the song is kind of like in this lingering state the whole time. You know, it's got melodies and, you know, piano parts and the violins, of course, but it's got a really like focus mode. That's the only way I can describe it. And a lot of the music in SMT is like that. So of course, the beginning of my dark aesthetic is going to be SMT5. I cannot wait to return to this game, but we must go from one 5 to another 5.
Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior. A massive thank you to Jesse for having me be on as part of a segment in his video here. Now for those who may be unfamiliar with myself, I'm a content creator quite well known for talking about lore and doing deep dive breakdowns on characters within fighting games. This has ranged from the likes of Street Fighter to Tekken, but most infamously Mortal Kombat. However, with all of that in mind, prior to my full-time commitment to talking about lore, I was, and still kind of am, a former music producer and session musician, having studied music production 1 year at university before I did do this full time. So with that said, my song of choice today is actually gonna be Bring Me the Light from Devil May Cry 5. And the reason why I've specifically chosen this song isn't just that it's pretty amazing, but even from like a technical, analytical surface level look at it, it's just a phenomenal song. In terms of mixing, sound design, progression, as well as how it alternates between itself but still keeps itself fresh, it's really engaging, and I love how it's largely reflective of how the gameplay functions. Kind of similar like Killer Instinct in that regard, where combos layer the audio track and progression of the song. It actively feels like you're being rewarded for your own execution and engagement with the game. But the reason why I've actually chosen Bring Me the Light is actually due to how the lyrics mirror the journey of Virgil. As someone who loves lore, story and narratives, that sort of stuff to me is chef's kiss. But what makes something like that so incredibly special is that in terms of how it's written, it doesn't feel out of place. So you get an instrumentation that quite frankly is phenomenal, you get a song progression that's always interesting and engaging to listen to, and then you have lyrics that not only work but also tell a story. It fits all parameters for what I love about this song. And then you pair it up with some really fun, dope gameplay, and it's just a straight up masterpiece. Bring Me the Light is such a fantastic song that is reflective of Virgil's character, one that chronicles his downfall and return in both a tragic yet exciting manner. A fallen son come to reclaim his fallen throne. So once again, massive thank you to Jesse for having me on, and please enjoy the rest of the video.
Next song to be featured is a game called Hollow Knight, a game I just recently finished during the kind of Halloween season, end of the year of 2024. And I chose 2 songs because it's my list, I could do whatever I want, and mostly I just couldn't decide between them both. But I have a really big soft spot for Hornet, which is the first song I ever heard in Hollow Knight, and immediately caught my attention, and was probably like the catalyst, honestly, to me even being interested in the game whatsoever. I didn't know at the time it was a Metroidvania, and I honestly had a huge blast with it. Although, admittedly, the story is super confusing for me, and I think a lot of people, for a lot of people as well, because I see a lot of lore videos and the views are like in the millions because it's a little convoluted. But that doesn't take away from the game. I really enjoyed the entire part, all the fights. There was a lot of boss songs that I wanted to choose from. But yeah, it was really cool. I really loved Hornet as well, so this being her song was really nice, and hearing her say Shaw over and over. The next song is also, what is it, the Lost Kin, right? Yeah, the Lost Kin, Broken Vessel. This to me felt like the first significant difficulty jump in the game. I was stuck on this boss for a long time. I don't know how long, but I want to say at least, an hour and a half to 2 hours of just doing that boss over and over and over, and I was just completely focused that entire time. But I love the way it sounds with the dun 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 dun. Another one of those focus heavy songs. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So Hollow Knight, Christopher Larkin, fantastic job. We are now all in the Silk Song waiting room, and I await that game. But we're gonna go from one game that reminds me of, you know, the underworld, although not insects, to a game about the actual underworld. The next song to be featured is God of the Dead. And The Unseen Ones, another pair from Hades, another game I recently finished and was a grand old time. I actually platinumed this game. I'd never platinum games, and I platinumed this game because it was that fun, the whole like roguelite, introducing new mechanics all the time. The game always felt fresh. I love that every character was like beautiful, every song was amazing. Darren Korb did a fantastic job. The thing about God of the Dead, obviously, is you're fighting your dad. And the final boss of the game was going to be the final boss multiple times. But the cool thing is that this is a motif that has been carried out throughout the entire game. It is the first motif you hear upon starting the game. The splash screen has this motif, and it is sprinkled throughout. So God of the Dead takes that up quite a bit, and giving us one of the most memorable parts of the game. And of course, there's the phase 2 and all that. But when you have finished the game, you will be then given the Pact of Punishment, where you can choose some conditions to make your life harder. And one of those is called Extreme Measures. And upon selecting Extreme Measures, you get another phase of Dad Fight, and that one is a test of your will. The screen goes dark, everything is just ugh. But if you manage to get there, you will hear the technically kind of hidden track of The Unseen Ones, which is actually, I completely forgot about this. It's the first song I heard. I didn't write this in my notes. When I write notes, I write like kind of like little key points, and then I just kind of improvise from there. So I completely forgot that The Unseen Ones is the first song I actually heard from from Hades. So that's a nice little bonus. Extreme metal shreds, like it's just non-stop guitar, really pumps you up, and it's just an amazing time. I need to play Hades 2. I've had it since its soft release, but I don't know if I'm waiting for it to be completely done, or I don't know, but it's just sitting in my backlog. Anyways, from one game about death to a game also very completely surrounded about death. Up next is Death's Door, also very similar to how Hades functioned. We are hearing the main motif of the entire game that you've been hearing throughout the entire levels and platforming, to now the final boss, which is now this extreme kind of like heavy electric guitar version of it. And I could be wrong about this, but I don't know if there's electric guitar in the soundtrack prior to this, and if so, it's very seldom. I just don't remember, but this is definitely like the heaviest one, where it's obviously very metal, and it's the kind of, what I like about this fight is this kind of culmination of everything we've experienced so far. For example, like the lead up to the fight is basically like every level of the game kind of just combined into one big section, and kind of testing all your abilities that you learned and all that, and then you bring all that to the Last Lord. And this is one of the funnest games I played in recent times. I love the little bird, and it's the only boss I think on here that features finger guns, so you know that had to make it. Really love this game. I recommend it to people all the time. Whenever it goes on sale, it's like $5. It's totally worth it, even at full price. I love Death's Door. I love the soundtrack. It's very unique, and was featured in the first VGM Vibes as well, in the forest themes. So I can't wait to keep talking about it and keep praising Death's Door. It's really, really fun. And closing out our dark aesthetic segment of this game is something I'm very excited to finally be talking about on this channel, Skullgirls. I've mentioned Skullgirls so many times on this channel. I have yet to feature them in VGM Vibes. This is kind of one of the reasons I started to do this series, so I can talk about stuff that I do know. People always ask me what are my favorite soundtracks all the time. Skullgirls is in my top 5, so no big deal. It's if you've never seen it, just kind of try to imagine maybe like Cuphead as a fighting game or something. It's very beautiful, all hand-drawn. The music is fantastic. If you notice, one of the composers on this was Michiru Yamane from, of course, Castlevania. A lot of the songs have that kind of Castlevania vibe. And similar to the previous songs, where the main motif is finally making its appearance in a more bombastic way, the same thing is happening in Skullheart Arrhythmia, which is the theme for the final stage, which is Final Atrium. And it's just such a catchy thing. You're going to hear it at the beginning of the game, you're going to hear it throughout the game, and you're going to be humming. I remember I did a guitar cover for this a long time ago, and it was a lot of fun. Skullgirls is something that I can't wait to talk about more and more and more when I find suitable vibes for it. But either way, it's such an incredible soundtrack. Every song is memorable to me, and I just want to keep talking about more Skullgirls. So yeah, Skullheart Arrhythmia, main theme of the game, turned into a boss theme, which I love. And we must move on to the next segment of songs, which is going to be a trifecta of, how do I put this? Trifecta of threes. Starting out the trifecta of threes is Shinobi 3, Return of the Ninja Master, making its return on VGM Vibes. This soundtrack, dude, yeah, it's incredible. I will always praise it. But also, did you hear that intro at the beginning? I mean, this song has such this aura that I can't explain, which is actually kind of fitting for this boss because this whole place is weird. I don't even know what's happening here. It's like looks kind of like a sewer. It looks like you're kind of rummaging through waste, question mark. Also, fun fact, it's round 3 chapter. It's called Body Weapon. To this day, I have no idea what the song title is referring to. My DRD, I looked it up, I couldn't find anything. So if anyone knows, please tell me. I have no clue. But either way, you're fighting this giant face, which is cool. The reason I like this fight is because it's one of those few instances where as you're progressing through the level, you can actually see the boss in the background, kind of like mocking you, you know, giving you a preview of what's to come. And then, of course, as you fight him and this ugly thing, the song takes off, and it's just such a cool, great sound. I love it, the bass, the rhythm of it. Like, that's all I have to say about Shinobi 3. I can say this about every single song, but in a soundtrack that has like Japanesque, Whirlwind, and Itaden, and what else? It's just full of bangers. Boom, 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 boom. I remember when I first reacted to the Big Arm version from Sonic Generations and Sonic 3. The little molecules in my brain were just like constantly exploding after like each riff after each riff. And man, it's such an iconic song from either the original or the Generations. I'm mostly talking about the Generations one, but of course I have to give flowers to the original, which apparently from a lot of the comments, you don't even get to hear the full song, because we just spoke earlier how like the bosses can be like instant in the earlier Sonics. Apparently you only can hear the first maybe 20 seconds of the fight, so Generations kind of fixed that. And man, did they just like turn up the heat with this song. The way the like battling keyboards and guitar riffs go on. Yeah, dude, Sonic music in general is kind of become a meme in a good way, because the community seems to find a way to find a song to fit into the VGM vibes. Eventually, I'm looking for the vibe where like Sonic can't make it in, just for the hell of it. But for sure, one of my favorite reactions on the entire channel. I watch it here and there because my face just starts melting, and of course, it's got to be in this little trifecta of threes. The next song on this list is Brave or Grave from Street Fighter Alpha 3. I cannot believe I'm finally talking about this game. Yet another one of my personal top 5 soundtracks. I've been waiting to speak about this game. You guys have no idea that it's taking all this power to constrain all this knowledge into like a minute. But basically, first of all, the name of this song, Brave or Grave. Think about that. That's sick. I love a good song title, and that is one of them. This is the main theme of Shin M. Bison in Street Fighter Alpha 3. I can talk about so much about this game, but basically it's my favorite Street Fighter. It is a prequel to Street Fighter 2, and in Japan this is also called Street Fighter 03. The Alpha series is the Zero series. For some reason they called it two different things, just to confuse you more. And there's a regular Bison in this game, but obviously the final boss is Shin Bison, who basically can read like all your inputs. He's super broken, but his biggest thing is the Psycho Crusher that takes up the whole screen, and you will know what it is as soon as you decide to jump. If you jump during this fight, you will die. Your entire life bar will disintegrate, and that's that. And one thing that I thought was really cool is Capcom, when they made the PSP version, which I think was called Alpha 3 Max. I forgot the name actually, but I owned it. You could actually play as Shin Bison. It was kind of like a hidden secret thing. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, dude, Street Fighter Alpha 3, I love every song in this game. Like seriously, Ryu's song, Rose, Vega's Crimson song, Balrog, dude, Cammy, like there's just so many. And then the announcer was just constantly hyping you up. The thing that I've never been able to say this about another game is that Street Fighter Alpha 3 has a very iconic and memorable drum sound. As soon as you hear 2 seconds of drums from Alpha 3, you know it's that game. And I think that says a lot, you know. It's just a very time capsule for me, and it's something that I grew up with, and I love it. And I can't believe I finally get to talk about Street Fighter Alpha 3. But this song is amazing. It's the final boss song, of course. It's full of triplets and electronic goodness. Oh. That concludes this trifecta of 3. We move on to the next segment, which is kind of more of a, not a segment, it's like miscellaneous songs that I have not experienced really in game myself, or just kind of don't really know too much about, but they are still great nonetheless. The next song on this list is a song called Nefertiti, version MMXI from the game Atelier Maruru, which is a remade song from the original, which is Monokemia. And from what I've gathered, the original song came from Monokemia, and that had an arranged version with vocals. And then this song is that arranged version, but replaced the vocals with a guitar line. Which, honestly, I don't mind. I really like instrumental stuff in general, and when I heard the song for the first time, I just remember it's like, what the heck is going on? You know, I've heard songs here and there from Gust, which is a pretty bizarre developer with their games. Like for example, I remember seeing this image. I'm like, I would never think this Blaze Blue Guilty Gear sounding song would come out of this. And then I saw some of the footage of the fight and was even more perplexed. But the Gust fans on this channel have been very fun and tell me all this stuff. And yeah, I don't really know much about it. I just really like the song, and it always stuck out to me. And we move on to the next one. Up next is probably the shortest entry on this list. This is Octopath Traveler, Daughter of the Dark God. And the reason it's the shortest one is because I'm about to start playing this game, like within a week of me recording this. So I don't want to know anything. I didn't look up anything, but I will be playing this. So kind of a cheap plug right here, Jesse's VODs. I just know it's a boss theme and I heard it before, but I will say a couple things. Yasunori Nishiki is incredible, and the reason why I'm even going to dive into Octopath Traveler. Also, fun fact, he's going to be in this video later. But Octopath Traveler is just something that kind of caught my attention, and I love this song. I just remember the opera standing out to me quite a bit because you don't really hear that in video games. And it just stood out for that. So I can't wait to experience it. And another fun fact is the artist, Wishwe, for my merch line is a huge fan of Octopath, so you might be able to see some of the art inspiration. So yeah, that is Daughter of the Dark God. Your Contract has expired from A Hat in Time, one of my recent favorite games. You guys have heard me talk about quite a bit in the past 2 years. I discovered this game on this channel through its music and decided to play it, and man oh man was it a fun time. I love this kind of game if you are into those like Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, Crash, those types of games, platformers and collectathons. This game is right up your alley. And something I just noticed now, I didn't even write this down, is that this is the third time, at least third time, that A Hat in Time has been featured in the Vibe series, but also all the songs are related to Snatcher. I didn't even think about that, but that's this character right here. So it's fitting. My favorite character in the game has some of the best music. And this is the boss of Snatcher, of course, and a very fun fight at that. The thing about this song is another beautiful piece from Pascal Steifel, who's such an incredible composer, because it's one of those soundtracks you really have to dive into. If you were to just hear this song and assume the rest of the soundtrack is like that, you'd be completely wrong, because this is kind of a standout, you know? Similar to how in Death's Door, like the electric guitar really never makes an appearance, but saved for like the bosses and like these kind of really big moments. For example, a favorite song of mine from this game is The Windmill Peak. Sounds like a completely different game. So, and another thing that I have to mention is Pascal's use of the lead synthesizer sound is so catchy and crystal clear. You'll hear it in this song, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about as soon as it comes in. It's in this song. You can hear it in Rush Hour. Just that piercing, like, dude, it's just such a good synth sound. But A Hat in Time is always going to be something I love talking about. I wish for everyone to play it when they want to have a great time just playing a video game, you know what I mean? Great little story, cool little character, and Snatcher's incredible at what he does. You know, I've heard a lot of songs from Touhou. I've met a lot of Touhou fans. They are very rabid, wild animals in a good way. And I can see why. They're very passionate about this game. This is Touhou 8, Lunatic Princess, or sorry, Flight of the Bamboo. Oh yeah, I forgot, the song titles are crazy. Flight of the Bamboo Cutter, Lunatic Princess from Touhou 8, Imperishable Night. Mouthful. All I'm going to say about this one is this has been my favorite Touhou song out of all of them that I've heard. It stood out immediately. Of course, if you've never heard Touhou music, they are the king of counter melodies. You have something blazing over here, and then you have a nice slow melody on this side, all while a trumpet is blasting in the background known as Zimpets. And what's not to love, you know? All the gameplay is from a bullet hell, so you just got stuff flying all over the place. And honestly, every time I see footage of this game, I feel like I need to put in eye drops. I don't know how you guys do it. I would go mad. But of course I was going to put this in here as my favorite Touhou song. But there's probably someone that's much better suited at speaking about Touhou than I am. Coming up next.
There are probably more good boss themes than any human being could reasonably listen to in their lifetime, but one that's always stuck out to me was Zun's You and Owen Was Her for, of course, his own Touhou series. And aside from the fact this song is just an amazing banger, of course, I've said before, only half jokingly, that Zun is a musician who decided to make games as an excuse to make VGM for those games. And so every game does use the music in a gameplay sense as well. That's part of why this song is so good, aside from just the fact that it's a great song. Now, in the actual game, which is a Danmaku game or a bullet hell game for those in the West, it has these giant patterns of projectiles flying down the screen, and every part of this song, actually, for at least the first segment of it, really matches with it. So it starts off with this very panicky, very fast, little like I'm scaring you, like you don't know what you're fighting, which is exactly what it is. Of course, this is the secret boss. Flandre Scarlet is the secret boss of the game that you have to unlock. And then as it gets to the second part of the song, it slows down, but it still remains this kind of like mysterious, uneven beat where on all of like the off beats, there's this kind of almost like a horn sound where it's like boom, 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 boom. So it's kind of like what is going on here? It's a little bit mysterious. And as that happens, she uses her first main attack that has this kind of weird like intersecting pattern, and the bullets are not nearly as straight that are flying at you. And so you're kind of like, whoa, okay, hold on, what's going on? What's going on here? And you make it through that, and then it gets to kind of the main segment of the song where everything now starts going along with the beat. Just boom, 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 boom. And once that happens, it returns to the very first pattern that you experience. So you kind of go from scared to scared in like a we got to figure this out way to kind of, okay, now we're in the middle of the fight. And then it continues on from there, where she of course goes through a bunch of different other patterns. But just the way that Zune was able to combine the gameplay of his game along with the music that he created all in one, being one of the most influential solo devs of all time, I think makes this song, on top of being a huge meme for a million years and an amazing song, my favorite boss song.
This next segment is going to be community picks from my Patreon that were suggested and voted for. And we are starting off with Risk of Rain 2, You're Gonna Need a Bigger Ukulele. Risk of Rain has been such a pleasant surprise for me. Everything I've heard from Chris Christodoulou, who I've spoken to a few times, really cool dude, shows up in a very active YouTube channel and has commented on my channel. He's just a really cool guy. And man, I want to like pick his brain one day because the stuff he writes is just kind of out of this world. The best way I can describe like Risk of Rain music is I try to make an attempt here, and it's space industrial prog metal. I don't know if that's correct, but it just all sounds like I'm just floating in like a void. It just sounds like endless kind of ambient cool stuff, you know what I mean? And it all sounds so good. So I didn't look up too much because I have Risk of Rain 2 in my backlog. I do intend to play it someday, but I did find out that this is the final boss of Mithrix, so it kind of spoiled myself. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything I've experienced from Risk of Rain 1 and 2 has been a delightful time. The rain formerly known as Purple, the Con Lentitud Poderosa, all these songs are just amazing. They have a huge following, and you can see why. You can see the views for yourself on this channel. And this was suggested, and I jumped at it. So Risk of Rain 2, of course, was going to make it with You're Gonna Need a Bigger Ukulele, which I think I've heard is a pun on You're Gonna Need a Bigger Boat. I don't know. Either way, amazing song. Another song that was picked and voted for was the Titan fight from Final Fantasy XVI, which is comprised of Do or Die, Titan Lost, and Heart of Stone. I don't know anything about this. I just reacted to it not too long ago. But from what I gathered in the comments, it seems to be like a standout of the game, kind of a crowd favorite fight. It's really hype and all that. What I got from it was that it sounded almost one-to-one of Final Fantasy XIV music. Like it sounded like unused music from that game to 16. Not a bad thing, just it's what I noticed immediately. It's definitely a standout even for, despite the other 16 stuff, because I've mentioned FF16 has a very Game of Thrones type of sound, a lot of orchestral stuff. And then this comes out of nowhere and, you know, introduces this sort of like Devil May Cry kind of sound, and it's really fun. I liked it. And I recognized the voice, which I guessed to be Koji Fox. I was correct. And I saw a couple of funny comments like this fight was making like people's PS5s like heat up their house and stuff like that because it's so intensive. But yeah, I don't know much about 16. I just know it's a really split thing, probably because it's the latest game. But you know, people either hate it or love it. There's no gray area. And yeah, I have no intention of playing it, but I like hearing people's opinions, regardless, good or bad. People that have been there for a while or not. But people seem to unanimously think this was a pretty fun time. And I will say this, if you are a fan of Final Fantasy boss music, stick around. One of the most passionate fan bases I've met doing the Auditorium and the Reacting to Video Game Music series is Kirby fans, with good reason. A lot of the music from Kirby is what I've described as unfathomable. You know, it's just hard to imagine this music to be made. It's always so top-notch in quality that it's kind of makes you stagger. This is Versus Star Dream from Kirby Planet Robobot, which apparently, fun fact, I didn't even hear the whole thing. I was so impressed by this song, and it was only phase 1. Something like that. Because, you know, people were like, oh, you gotta hear the rest, I'm like, there's more. So as I'm recording this, I have not yet heard the whole fight. I will, and I'll upload that too. But I was already impressed with just the first phase. You know, I put out the sunglasses and everything. This was also voted for. I don't know much about it since I haven't played it, and this was suggested. But yeah, man, anything Kirby, I don't think they can do any wrong, and that says something. But we must move on from one iconic Nintendo IP to, I think, a more forgotten Nintendo IP. The next song to be featured is Boss Battle 1 from Kid Icarus Uprising. And from what I've heard from the communities, that these games come out so far apart and there are just not that many games in general, so it's like this kind of forgotten thing. You know, Kid Icarus isn't Smash, and I don't know, maybe I don't know why they're not doing much with them. But I will say the music I've heard from Kid Icarus Uprising has been phenomenal, and a huge part of that is the composer list. I commend you to go look it up. It is just ones that come to mind. Yasunori Masuda, who's the composer of this one, of course, from Chrono Trigger and many other games. Motoi Sakuraba from Star Ocean, Yuzo Koshiro, and like 4 others, iconic names. It's insane. So, have yet to see this game in action. I've heard a couple songs. Really diverse stuff because of all the composers. I've heard flamenco, I've heard this kind of rock stuff. But this song is one of the catchiest songs I've heard in recent months. The chorus will get stuck in your head as soon as you hear it. Dum, 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 da, da, dum. It is just going to stay in there, and I think that's one of the coolest parts about it. I cannot wait to hear more Kid Icarus Uprising, and I hope that Nintendo does something with Kid Icarus, because, you know, people seem to really love it, but there's just not much going on. So, either way, amazing song, Boss Battle 1. I remember the first time I heard Lost Odyssey, and it was Howl of the Departed, and I just remember like just kind of freezing in my tracks. I had no idea who Nobuo Uematsu was yet, and as I started to kind of learn more about this series, I've just become more and more and more curious about it. It was a one-time game. It's stuck on the Xbox. I am determined to play this someday, but I mean, it just sounds like such a cool time, and everything I've heard from everyone that's played it is like, oh man, I'm one of those few people that got to play it, and I feel so lucky. So this is a kind of a dream team. We got what happens when like Final Fantasy, Legend of Dragoon, and Shadow Hearts developers come together. They make greatness. So apparently the story is really cool, and I'm featuring Howl of the Departed and Dark Saint, 2 boss themes that are fantastic. It is such a cool thing to hear Nobuo Uematsu in a different light and on a different console, because I don't know, maybe some of you will be able to tell that that's him, but to me it just sounds so different from Final Fantasy that I wouldn't have guessed it's him at first. You know, it's so different from what I'm used to, but it is an iconic moment in the auditorium, because I do remember hearing that for the first time. Also, this game has arguably one of the best map themes ever with Never Ending Journey. I've just loved everything I've heard from Lost Odyssey, and one day I will play this somehow, some way, but we must move on. But if you experience this game, please share your stories. But this is one of those kind of anomalies in the video game world that only some have managed to get their hands on. The most community reception and votes and suggestions, we have Mario & Luigi's Bowser's Inside Story with the song The Grand Finale, otherwise known as In the Final. I don't have a whole lot to say about the song besides that it's incredible. Since I heard it, it's been stuck in my head, and I think that's why it's so good. It's immediately memorable, and similar to how the last song where I said that it didn't really sound like Nobuo Uematsu, I wouldn't have guessed that this is Yoko Shimomura. To me, I mean, yeah, now that I've heard it, yeah, I can kind of hear it, but like, I haven't heard anything like that from her prior, besides maybe Kingdom Hearts. It kind of sounds like a Kingdom Hearts song, sort of. But this song is just from beginning to end, just has kind of all these right ingredients. I love the way it sounds, its energy. It sounds like you can kind of focus on it too, which I really love in a boss theme. And it's for good reason that it was the most voted one. So with that, I'm going to segue into the next segment of songs, which I'm going to dub kind of this golden era of the 90s, of the mid 90s to the late 90s. Alright, I had to turn some lights on. It was getting depressing in here. But we return with the next segment of the 90s. This song could have kind of fit in both categories, the last one and this one. This is Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistros. And this is the Sinistro battle theme. This one was voted and suggested for, but did not win and did not even come close, actually. But since I can do whatever I want, I decided to throw it in here because I like hearing new things. I never heard of Lufia, and anytime I get to experience something new and fresh, I'm all about it. I never heard of his composer either, Yasunori Shiono. So I was pleasantly surprised. They had a pretty big following. A lot of people were like, oh my god, Lufia, Lufia. And this song is pretty cool. I don't know anything about it. I just know it's... I don't know. I think it's the final boss. But I just love how power metal it sounds and how kind of ahead of its time it sounded. And that's pretty much it. It was just a great job. And I'm glad I decided to just kind of, go for it and see what happens, and it happens like that sometimes. And we continue with this kind of golden era of the 90s with a game that is considered by many people their favorite game of all time and one of the best soundtracks of all time. What's funny about this song is that it starts off like an Ozzy Osbourne song, and if you know the context of this game, you see why that's kind of funny. This is the battle with Magus, or the Magus battle, and I had no idea just how controversial this character's name is because no one knows how to say it, and there's going to be people commenting, oh, it's actually pronounced like this. No one knows. So I say Magus. Anyways, this was a really cool fight in Chrono Trigger. And probably one of the most iconic boss themes in this entire list. I think a lot of people would be, quite upset if this wasn't on here. When I played Chrono Trigger, admittedly, I kind of struggled with it because that was my own fault. Don't do this, by the way. I was juggling two RPGs, and that was The Legend of Dragoon and Chrono Trigger, two very big RPGs with a lot of characters, and my brain was just... But I do remember the battle with Magus because the soundtrack doesn't really sound like most things I've heard. It's very cool. It's the debut of Yasunori Mitsuda, and there's a whole story behind that. And it's I featured Chrono Trigger before in the VGM vibes with the Forest song, and it's just an amazing soundtrack full of bass and really cool synthesizers, a lot of rhythmic things. And the battle with Magus is kind of this reoccurring motif that you hear throughout the castle, which I really liked. So when you enter this place, you're kind of introduced with this kind of mini cutscene with the moon and everything, and then eventually you get to this really, really cool fight. And I forgot to find the footage here, but maybe I'll link it somewhere. If you just type in like battle with Magus, it's going to be one of the first results. Someone on YouTube took that fight and they turned it into this kind of like 2D, 3D thing that looks super badass. So I'm gonna have to link that, but this fight is just really, really cool with all the effects, all the new attacks that you're seeing for the first time, and yeah, probably one of the most iconic boss themes ever, and of course it was gonna make it in here. Wild Arms, my beloved. This is Boomerang Flash, or War Demon, but we'll talk about that in a second. This is a boss fight that is missable / optional, and it's kind of this like arena type place that you can visit. You do fight Boomerang throughout the game, and he's kind of this like wanderer character that just likes to fight you every now and then. But the last fight is the boomerang flash fight, and one of the coolest songs in this entire game. This soundtrack is very much inspired by my favorite composer, which is Ennio Morricone, and you can hear it just sprinkled throughout the entire soundtrack. And this boss fight sounds like something that like an Ennio Morricone movie would have, but in a video game. So for me, it's like I felt right at home with it. And then when this game got remade to Alter Code F, the composer Michiko Narake came back and arranged the song in such a different way. It almost sounds like a totally different song. But it's very interesting whenever a original composer comes back to redo something, because it almost sounds like maybe this was like the intention the first time without limitations. So you hear like a proper trumpet being played, and it sounds really, really even more so Ennio Morricone. And I love it. Wild Arms is a really, really cool game. I think it's still underrated. It has the best intro movie I've ever seen. And you know, we just talked about Chrono Trigger, and I always compare the two games. They're pretty similar. They play almost identical, and it's just part of that golden era of the 90s. I love the soundtrack to this game, and the boomerang flash / War Demon. It's called War Demon in Alter Code F. Really, really great boss song. Ah, yes, the battle with Dork, Loser, Ass, whatever you called him, Red. I know him as Gary, but this is the rival fight. I think it's called Versus Rival. I've seen like Versus Champion, Elite Four Rival, I don't know, but it's the final boss song of the Gen 1 Pokemon, which I did play and was my only experience with Nintendo for a very long time. I remember at Christmas I remember very specifically, shout out my mom, I got the Game Boy Color, the Pikachu edition. It was yellow, and it came with Pokemon Yellow. And I also got a VHS of some of the Indigo League, and it was the episode. Oh, I don't remember the exact episode. I just remember like it was Gloom and Vulpix in the episode. If you know which one I'm talking about, it was that one. And ever since then, you know, that whole like year and a half, I was all about Pokemon Gen 1. I still know like almost all their names by heart. I can probably be quizzed on them. Maybe even their battle cries too. I put a lot of time into that game. And I love the soundtrack. That soundtrack was so bizarre because it's coming out of this tiny little mono speaker, and it just, you know, so many things have stuck with me since I was a kid, like the Pokemon Center theme, the Victory Road theme, this one. And the reason I like this one is because it's kind of a callback to a lot of battle themes that were in the game with trainers and gym leaders, and all of a sudden now it's like the main thing versus Gary, and it's really cool. Let me know what you named him in this game. I always find that funny. I don't even remember what I named my own character. Probably just Jesse or something. And I don't even remember what I called him either. But yeah, it was a good time. And it was a very long time ago, 1998, which doesn't seem like that long ago, but it was. But that is Versus Rival from Pokemon Gen 1.
I'm going to take you back to 1996, a full year before Final Fantasy VII came out, and when Legend of Legaia came out. Now, this is a PlayStation 1 game that I think is probably the king of, oh, I've seen that, or I've heard of that, but I've never played it genre. The whole soundtrack, it's very much, I would say, a product of its time, but there is one particularly memorable boss and boss theme that we're going to talk about with this game. The game splits you up into 3 separate parts. You know, they have like the strong guy, and then like this swift chick, and then they have the leader, protagonist, whatever. Super cheesy. I don't know, man. This game has a lot of those like,
But that's really dumb. But he's so cool. But that's so dumb.
so what's really unique about this encounter in the game, it kicks off with like the regular boss theme. The boss theme changes to a different one, but it doesn't even stop there. And in super 1996 fashion, they merge with Koru, this big symbiote Saru. It's a ticking time bomb, and you gotta take him out in 4 turns, which is kind of a big ask. Once the fight starts, you get a completely unheard, unique boss that doesn't play any other time in the game. It's just for this one boss fight. Listen to this. it definitely makes you feel like you're on a timer and you gotta cut which wire do I cut? Is the blue wire or the red wire? Your heart rate like starts to match the music, so you get 4 turns. He gets 1 move from Guy Delilis, 1 move from Luth Delilis, 1 move from Chi Delilis, and then he charges, letting you know, hey, this is your last chance. And if you don't do it in 4 turns, he just self-destructs and annihilates your party. Oops. This was the bane of every JRPG player's existence in 1996. If you just are trying to use your hyper arts that you got, you're cutting it close. Or you could just use a point card and like one hit him and it's over or whatever. But like, such a cool, memorable boss fight. You fight 3 one-on-one battles, and then you have to fight the ticking time bomb. But I feel like a lot of the music in Legend of Legaia is kind of slept on. There's a lot of good, it was during a time when house music was popular. I don't know what to say. It was just like, it's just good. It's really good. And then there's voice acting in the game too, right? They say all their really cool Japanese stuff. I didn't even know it was Japanese in 1996. I just thought it was like cool.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
It's the kind of stuff that, like, when you're 8 or 9 years old, this is the imaginative crap you'd make up in your head on the playground when you're play fighting with your friends, or at least that's what my nerdy ass did. Maybe you didn't do that, but I did. Never heard anyone talk about this. This always stuck out to me, and I just wanted to share.
Big round of applause for Brian Blitzes, who I'm a big fan of. Hopefully they continue to make more YouTube videos. If you guys are a fan of my Twitch channel, he's also the artist behind my tomato throwing emote. So shout out Brian. But we continue with The Legend of Dragoon, the first boss battle you hear from Takeo Muratsu. Fun fact, Takeo Muratsu also made an appearance in Wild Arms, which we just talked about, as an arranger for the credits song. I didn't know that until I did this video. And the thing about Legend of Dragoon music is, I made an entire video, I'll probably link it up here, about the Legend of Dragoon music. It's so unique and different, I can't explain it. It's just unique, right? Because it's 2 different composers from like 2 entirely different backgrounds. We have, American Dennis Martin, and then we have Japanese Takeo Muratsu. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like they both didn't really have communication with each other. They just kind of did their own thing, and then they just kind of combined the soundtracks. I don't know if that's the thing that happened exactly, but it sounds like that's what happened. And you can kind of hear that. You can, like a lot of the field themes and ambient stuff is Dennis, and a lot of the battle themes and character themes and like hype stuff is Takeo Muratsu. So it's a really cool combination of stuff. And the boss battle, which luckily you get to hear really on, super catchy. This game was a really fun time, and I just wanted to throw in here that it's technically the second RPG I ever played, the first being Pokemon. I played this on a demo called a jam pack, and it was the section right after the Helena prison. And that always stuck with me because I never played a game like that. I don't know what an RPG was, But I remember sticking out because you had to like time the buttons or time the attacks, and like the characters would scream like volcano and all this random stuff. And it wasn't until I did the auditorium later that I remembered about The Legend of Dragoon, and then that's when I ended up playing it. And it was a fun time. I love watching people play this game, and their connections with the characters like Rose and of course Dart, and hearing all these things and watching them do the additions and get better at the additions. Legend of Dragoon is a good time. Closing out my golden era of the mid-90s is Ape Escape with Peak Point Matrix. I'm going to talk a lot about this one because Ape Escape is very important to me. It is the reason you're watching me. Ape Escape has not only inspired my reacting to video game music series, but it also inspired VGM vibes, because I was trying to find a way to speak about songs I know, and any chance I get to speak about Ape Escape, I will. It is also in my top 5 favorite soundtracks, and for good reason. It has such a nostalgic place in my heart. I love this game. It was so fun. I still haven't even played all of them. I know 1 like the back of my hand. 2 I rented. And don't remember anything about it. I just remember it looked all new and the character was like taller or something. And 3 I never touched. But 3 I'm so interested in because the composer came back for 3. He wasn't there for 2. So I've never even heard anything of 3. Anyways, Ape Escape, obviously you're running around collecting apes, and you are going through different parts of the world and different times, so there's a lot of time travel and just a lot of room for musical prowess. Peak Point Matrix is the real true final boss theme, which I like. So you can obviously beat the game to a certain extent the first time you fight Spectre, the main evil ape. But upon returning back to every stage and collecting all the remaining apes, you will then head to the final boss of Peak Point Matrix. And there's something so satisfying about that I'll never forget is when you beat Spectre, obviously you knocked him out, and you remember that, oh yeah, he's an ape, and you just do with him what you've done to everyone else, and you capture him. And I'll never forget the first time where you capture him and you get the replay 3 times of gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. And then nothing gets said and it just fades to black in the credits. I'm never gonna forget that, dude. Like, the soundtrack is incredibly nostalgic. I love everything in this game. It's extremely powerful as far as earworms and melodies. Every song, in my opinion, is very memorable, and that's why it stuck with me for so long. So, any chance I get to talk about Ape Escape, I'm gonna take it. And the one I'm featuring is from the kind of remastered soundtrack of the Originape soundtracks. But either version is fine, you know. I'm a huge fan of Suichi Terada, and I can't wait to hear more. But that concludes my kind of golden era, but we move on to another game that is dearly beloved.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Andre Chico. I go by the name Chico. Originally, I'm a competitive fighting game player at heart, but when lockdown hit, I pursued a different line of gaming since there was no more tournaments to travel to. And the line of gaming that I went down was Kingdom Hearts speedrunning. I've always been a huge fan of this series, and I'm familiar with all the games. I also found the context of this video not only humbling to be a part of, but also coincidentally convenient for me, considering the category of speedruns that I did was a boss rush category, which I did get a couple world records in. Little humble flex. That being said, this wasn't an easy decision considering how vast this series is and how notorious it is for its amazing music. And I have many favorites, and there's a long list of honorable mentions. But the song I wanted to acknowledge is a song called The 13th Struggle. It's a musical composition by Yoko Shimomura. It's very well known, and it's a reoccurring theme throughout the entire series, no pun intended. Since its release, the song has added 2 new arrangements, both of which were added into Kingdom Hearts 3 for the Luxord and the Larxene fight. But the one I'm referring to today made its first debut in Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which isn't the first game in the series, but lore-wise, it is. It's also made appearances in Kingdom Hearts Rebirth, Kingdom Hearts 2, Kingdom Hearts Coded, almost all the games in the entire series. And I wouldn't call it oversaturation, it just really is that good. And it's very suiting as well for the environment and whenever it does present itself. It really captivates the environment of the boss that you're fighting against or the ally that you're playing with in your party, which is usually any of the battles against the main antagonist of the entire series, which is the Organization 13. That being said, shout out Uncle Jesse. Thank you for letting me be a part of this video. It was awesome. It was fun. I'm glad that I got to share my opinion, and hope everyone's taking care of themselves. Have a good rest of your week, and stay strong.
Following the previous song, this is Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind, Vector to the Heavens Shion, the data battle version. I'm just going to say this right now. Kingdom Hearts, out of everything I've ever done, is probably the most confusing series. But when I say that, it is not a help me try to understand, please explain. It's more like I'm just kind of memeing, because man, just finding research for this game is wow, you know. And it wasn't until recently that I found out Kingdom Hearts 2 is like the third game or something, which makes, anyways. So I believe this song is featured in Remind of Kingdom Hearts 3, but it is a culmination of a bunch of songs, which is Dearly Beloved, Kaori's theme, and Shion. I remember I heard this song a long time ago, when the auditorium was just taking off, and I was getting all the big requests early, and a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans were joining in. And Vector to the Heavens, this version of it, has been such a memorable thing. I've remembered it since day one. I've been listening to it for the past 3 years. It's one of those songs that's stuck on my playlist. The last time I reacted to to like 3 different versions of it, I told a story of like some stranger coming up to me and asking what I'm listening to, and I told him it was this, you know, kind of put him on some Kingdom Hearts. It's just one of the coolest songs I've ever heard, and the fact that it's a boss theme, and finding out much later that it's like all these motifs of different characters, I think that's really, really cool. So for me as a newbie, I was just enjoying the song that is already fantastic. But for the Kingdom Hearts fans, it seems like it's a just beautiful treat. So it's a win-win for everybody. And of course, Yoko Shimomura, who's been here a couple times on this channel, well, more than a few times, but also in this very episode and in VGM Vibes. I mean, what's not to say about her? She's a legend, and I love this song. And we're going to move on to another segment of notable games known as RGG Studios. Ooh, Yakuza 0. Oh man, this was such a fun time when I first heard it. This is the 3 lieutenants of the Dojima family, Kuze, Owano, and Shibusawa. I always forget the last one's name. I'm just going to talk about this briefly because I missed this series and I want to return to it. I played 0, and actually let me go back a bit. I discovered Yakuza 0 on this channel, of course, and the first song I heard was Pledge of Demon, Kuze's theme, otherwise known as How Many Times Do We Have to Teach You This Lesson, Old Man? And I remember losing my mind. It was such a fun reaction, one of my favorite reactions on this channel, and a lot of people's one of their favorite videos I've done, because I was like a kid in a toy store. I've always heard of Yakuza for a long time, and then that was my first experience with it. Da 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 da. First time hearing Hidenori Shoji and just kind of brain melting, and I remember I covered this song on the guitar. That was a lot of fun. But this game is just filled with just incredible music, incredible boss themes, but I chose the kind of like the main 3 antagonists of the game. And I like all songs, so I just kind of lumped them all in here. My favorite being Pledge of Demon, but there's also With Vengeance, which is Awano's. I really love the kind of mellow vibes and the acoustic part of it, and I love the high energy of Two Dragons. The whole thing is just like a really cool movie, and I can't wait to return to Kiwami someday. But until then, Yakuza music, always really good. Now it's called Like a Dragon, but hearing these songs always makes me want to just jump right back in. But we will jump into another RGG Studios game right now. Next song to be featured is a pair of songs called Dig in Your Heels and Unwavering Belief from Lost Judgment. Oh my god. I remember this reaction like it was yesterday. Man, the camera was over here. I was in my old apartment. I was working the last job I had, and I just remember coming home that night and then hearing this, and my brain just shattered. It was one of the first times, I think the first time, where a requester uploaded this version themselves, which is the video I'm using here, so I can hear these kind of songs be heard together. And man, it was just the most fun like EDM experience I could have imagined. EDM, hard house, trance, dubstep, all with this action stuff playing, which is like mega spoilery. And I was just in ear heaven. And I'll never forget that. It was such a fun time. And the song just kept feeling like I was climbing a mountain constantly, like the climactic feel of the whole song just kept going and going and going up until it just erupted. And very few things have come close to that feeling I got that day. And when I was looking for songs to feature here, I'm like, oh yeah, this one, Lost Judgment. I don't own this one. I own all the Yakuza games, but I don't own the Judgment games. I don't know if there's more than one, but doing this video reminded me that maybe I should, get into this again. But yeah, this one was a fun time, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the only time I heard of Chihiro Aoki as a composer, I don't know, but damn, dude. So we move on from the RGG Studios to another studio called Monolith Soft. In this mini segment of Monolith Soft, I'm going to be talking about Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition. I played 1 and 2 in 2024, and I loved the whole thing so far. I really love meeting Shulk and Rex and Ricky and Ryan and all of them. And the music, of course, goes without saying, is incredible. The magnitude of artists they have and just how every song is memorable and just so serene all the time. Zanza the Divine is the theme of fighting against God. This is one of those standout songs where it doesn't really sound like any other song in the game. There's not a whole lot of, well, let me rephrase this. There's electric guitar in the soundtrack, but not like this. It's a very like chug heavy kind of metal song, plus the piano, which is really nice. But on top of that, it's from Manami Kyoto, who's made some of my favorite songs in this entire game. For example, just a couple that I wrote. Everyday Life, Satoral Marsh, and my favorite song from Xenoblade Chronicles 1, Magna Forest at Night, or Forest of the Nippon at Night. She is super talented, and the fact that she gets the final boss song is just amazing. I love it. And yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the heaviest song in the game. So that's all I wanted to say about Xenoblade Chronicles. I'm currently in the middle of the journey. I have to play 3 still. I look forward to that. And I wanted to give a shout out to the next song, or not the next game, I should say, for a song called Incoming. There's so many songs I could have chosen, but Xenoblade is just packed. But we move on to the very next game from Xenoblade Chronicles.
Hi, my name is Lori, and I am a content creator on Twitch, and I love the Xenoblade Chronicles series. So Song of Giga Rosa is such a fun song in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Hearing this in Chapter 4 of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was so funny because it was kind of like a bit of a whiplash. This song just feels so fun and literally so perfect for the situation that we were in the moment of the game. This was during like a boss fight, and the boss fight was supposed to be like kind of silly. Like I just remember laughing a ton while like fighting the boss and going through all of like my usual emotions of when I'm in the middle of a boss fight while I was playing this game. But it was so hard for me to stay focused because of the type of fight we were in. And I feel like this song is perfect for what we were doing at the moment of this game and for this specific boss fight, because I don't think it was meant to be taken seriously. And it's just a really comedic moment in the story. I mean, there's a lot of comedic moments in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but like this one, I remember just absolutely losing it and having just a blast with it. And I think the song helps a lot with that because it's just so upbeat. It's just so fun. It just feels so silly, but it's also like just such a good song. I think that's my favorite thing about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 as well, is that there's just so many different moments that go from like comedy, and the music really showcases that. And then it goes to another scene, which is very emotional. And again, like the music in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it's just incredible. And I love that we can go from a super silly scene, super silly boss fight where the music you can just feel it in the music, to another scene where I'm like sobbing, I'm crying, and the music is just, it's not helping. It's not helping as in it's just making me cry more.
NieR lovers rejoice, it is our time. I hope you like NieR because we're about to talk about it for a while. I love the music from these games. This whole next segment is NieR stuff. Yoko Taro, or I should say Keiichi Okabe and Monaka. We are starting with Grandma, one of the more odd songs in this list. I'm a huge fan of when songs kind of like don't fit and it's a little odd and weird. And if we're talking odd and weird, NieR and Yoko Taro are right there. So this is the boss fight against a giant monster that looks like it came out of your nose, while we're hearing this super beautiful, serene piano arpeggio, which I think may be Kaigo Hoashi. I couldn't really confirm that, but I think it's him. And it's just like this river of notes. And then, of course, the beautiful Emmy Evans singing alongside of it. And in case you didn't know, I think Emmy Evans is probably one of the most talented singers in the planet. Her voice sounds like a pillow in your ear. I saw her live. It was amazing. I love this song. It's one of my favorite songs. Before I did the Vibe series, I had like kind of another similar series where I did like top 20s. And when I did the top 20 of NieR Replicant, or the first NieR, Grandma was up there. I think I put it in my top 3. I don't remember exactly, but it was up there. And it's just one of those songs that, during a boss fight where you expect a big bombastic thing, you have this just odd pacing and this really beautiful piano. The next song I wanted to talk about in this game is Gods Bound by Rules, which I found out that boss is actually called Shahryar. I had no idea, but it's the big boss fight. Say that 5 times fast. The Barren Temple, which is one of my favorite parts of the game, when you're in the desert and you're doing all these like puzzles in the this like temple, and we have the song that's prior to that, which is Temple of Drifting Sands, and that motif carries on into this boss fight, which is super beautiful. I couldn't find the credits on the singer who's doing this, so if you know, let me know. But the good thing about Gods Bound by Rules in a sea of amazing boss songs is this one has just this incredible violin. Reminds me of sort of Kingdom Hearts stuff, but what's really nice about it is that it's the motif that you've been hearing with the singing vocal part, but now done on the violin, and then it's just really, really beautiful. It actually got remade in the NieR Replicant version 1.22, and to be totally honest, I wasn't a big fan of that one. And I know that's like a whole debate whether people like the original or the NieR Replicant version 1.22. And to me, I like both. I like bits and pieces from both. But for this particular song, they nailed it with the original. The Replicant one, or the 1.22 one, took away the violins, which was the best part, and added kind of a really cool part with the like stabs, the rhythmic stabs. But the first one is just kind of like chef's kiss for me. And a game with amazing music throughout and incredible boss fights. This one had to make it, and we're going to be moving on to the updated version of the game, which we were just talking about, NieR Replicant version 1.22. next song is Fleeting Words from NieR Replicant version 1.22. I'm kind of considering all versions of Fleeting Words. There's a lot of them, and my favorite one is the one that Square Enix uploaded, which is the another edit version, which combines the soft part with like the battle theme. And man, about 10 years later when they revisited this game and did the soundtrack, this was a added part to the game. It was not in the original, the whole mermaid section, and I would have never guessed unless people said it to me. It's so seamless, it just fits in with the story. The music is fantastic. This is one of the songs that actually interested me in even trying NieR. That's how strong it was. This is one of the best vocal melodies I've ever heard in my life. And the fact that it's connected to a boss that's gigantic, that's another reason I wanted to get into the game, is because I saw this gigantic boss, and that always excites me. So it's just an incredible thing, and that storyline was also kind of bizarre and really interesting too, with the whole mailman and stuff. But yeah, Fleeting Words I also ranked it pretty damn high in my NieR top 20, but this one had to make it, of course, from the version 1.22 NieR Replicant. The very first NieR game I ever played was NieR Automata, and man, what a game that was. It has shot up to one of my favorite games of all time. I love this game. I love recommending this game. It is such a unique, weird, bizarre experience with the bullet hell stuff and the multiple characters and the endings, and you can roll credits on eating a fish. It's just such a cool thing. But I'm putting two songs here which are my favorites. I couldn't decide. We have my favorite song in the game and my favorite song in all of NieR, which is the Dark Colossus Kaiju version, which actually appeared in the original NieR game. That was during the big town raid of the boss. But this version is I remember hearing it and my mind just couldn't handle it. Everything was just hitting so hard, the vocals, the organ solo, everything. And I do remember one of the highlights of that reaction was me saying something like, do you fight jet fighters or something? Because it kind of sounds like Ace Combat. Lo and behold, you do. So that made it just that extra bit of funny, and just such a great, it was my favorite boss too in the game, which just happened to work out. I loved it. It's one of my favorite songs in general, not just video game music. I love Dark Colossus Kaiju. And with that said, I have to give a huge props to Possessed by Disease, another fight in the game, and a really cool fight too with the whole lights turning on and all that. But man, Nami Nakagawa goes off in this song, the singer. It is so catchy, and I find myself listening to these two songs pretty much all the time. But there's so many good songs in NieR Automata that it's kind of ridiculous. I wanted to feature a beautiful song which features both Emmy Evans and Janique Nicole, which sounds incredible live, by the way. There's just so many things to choose, but if that was the theme of this whole video, is if only I could put this one and this one and this one. How do you think it got from 15 to 65? So we must move on, but play NieR and enjoy that time, because it is some of Square's best work. But if you're a fan of Square, then man, do I have some news for you on this upcoming segment, because this whole next segment is all Final Fantasy.
This is the first video game soundtrack that I've ever purchased. And this is the second one. And this is the one that we're going to be talking about today, or more specifically, Dancing Mad. I think Dancing Mad is a really, really special song for so many reasons. Nobuo Uematsu really takes a killer soundtrack that has songs like Terra's Theme and Slam Shuffle that plays in a town that you've probably never heard of. And with Dancing Mad, it just takes things up to not an 11, like a 21. The stakes are really high. You're thrown into a situation where you're fighting against godlike forces that no human should even be casting their gaze upon. The full version of this song is about 17 or 18 minutes, and it's sectioned off into 4 different movements. You start at the base of this Tower of Gods, and then you work your way up. And I have heard that people saying that each of these movements represent like hell, purgatory, heaven, and then God basically at the end, which I'm not sure if that's like official, but it sounds really cool. And this piece starts off as like a classical Bach-inspired piece, basically a classical symphony. And in the 4th and final phase, it goes into this progressive rock jam out session, which just completely threw me off guard when I was listening to this for the first time while trying to fight the boss. I am fighting for my life and the life of the entire world, but I just wanted to rock out. See for yourself. Life. I feel like I'm listening to prog rock right now, and I'm so happy. This is amazing. I don't even know what I'm doing right now. Everyone's dying, and I'm just jamming. Guys. Okay. Wow. One of the things that I feel like is really cool about this whole thing is how Uematsu tied in the classical to the progressive, because progressive rock really takes a lot of inspiration from classical music. So I feel like everything just kind of goes together so perfectly. It works really well, even though at first you're kind of like, what the heck is going on? The bass line, the drums kicking in right at that moment, and I just kind of felt like somebody was like massaging my brain in like all the right spots. This song makes me so emotional to hear it. It's tense, it's horrifying, it's beautiful, it's haunting. I felt like I was having some sort of otherworldly or spiritual revelation. Who did I use an ether on? I used it on the wrong person? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can't even focus on what is happening right now. If you guys didn't guess already, progressive rock is like my favorite genre of music, so hearing this like this in a video game for the first time, it made me so excited, so happy, and I'm really glad that I got a chance to talk to you guys a little bit about it. So thank you again, Jesse. I started to pay attention to music in video games more since I started watching your channel, and I can't wait to see what you have in store for us in the future. That exceeded my expectations. Like, Jesse, you did not tell me. You didn't tell me it was like my favorite kind of music in my video game.
You know, it's been a while since I've talked about Final Fantasy VII, and it is something of a extravagant event on this channel because it was my introduction to the FF series, and you know, starting with Remake and being impressed by that, and then playing the rest of them from there. Well, by rest I mean 8, 7, 8, 9, and Remake Rebirth. And I've become quite a big fan of it. So one thing I wanted to mention in this pair of songs is the beautiful thing about being a human is that, you know, opinions can change. When I first did my ranking of the top 20 songs, which by the way was extremely hard, you try ranking 20 songs from FF7. But when I did that, I put One Winged Angel at number 2 and Genova at 3, with my number 1 still the same, which is Listen to the Cries of the Planet. But since then, I've kind of changed my mind, and I'll swap the 2 and 3. I think Genova now is my preferred boss theme of 7. And simply that has to do with the simplicity of the musicianship of it. It is an extremely simple and effective melody. It's extremely memorable right away. And it's not a matter of like what's better. It's just kind of like what my mood is. But most of the time I gravitate towards Genova's theme, which for me, again, is super amazing. It's got this descending, dark, evil tonality of just this, which kind of fits this whole like character, right? Like you're kind of spiraling into this almost dream state. Well, against fighting this alien, and that's kind of how it feels like. And then you get that one little brief moment of da-da-da, 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 right? And then just immediately goes back and shuts that down. So Genova is just such a cool thing, and my biggest advice is if you play any instrument or have been wanting to play an instrument, Genova is like so beginner friendly. You can figure it out by ear. Trust me, it's quite simple and very fun to play. But we must segue to One Winged Angel, which of course has to be here. I think you cannot have a boss video without talking about One Winged Angel. It is the final boss of the game, Sephiroth. And man, this song has a lot of, there's just a lot to talk about. I'll keep it brief though. I still think it's unbelievably iconic. The fight is iconic. I beat it in my first try, which I was very proud of. There was a very clutch miss on my Tifa, and it made me win. But One Winged Angel is fascinating for so many reasons, but all I can really do is, lead you to another video from Polygon where Nobuo Matsu himself kind of gets interviewed for just a couple minutes of how he constructed that song. So watch that, because that'll be way more insightful than what I can provide. But basically, he just took different parts of just riffs and melodies and just kind of like jigsaw puzzled them together, which for me, I super relate to as a musician. That's how I write. So when I found out that's how that one got put together, it made me think, oh, that's why I like it so much, And the other thing is kind of a foreshadowing another song a little later, is the use of the tritone. It's a music theory interval. It's the very first thing you hear, dun, 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 dun. The tritone is considered the most evil sounding interval in music. So what better way than to put it as the final boss? You also probably know it as the intro to Purple Haze from Jimi Hendrix. I also wanted to give a shout out to Husky by the Geek for letting me be a guest in his One Winged Angel collaboration video. That was a lot of fun. I got to play guitar and join the ranks of a bunch of other people in that huge collaboration, and that video's done really well. So definitely watch that, and a big shout out to Husky. But of course, Genova, One Winged Angel, there's so many cool boss songs. There's like that whole last section of the game was just boss music, the Genova stuff, the other Sephiroth stuff. And there's also the, Those Who Fight Further or To Fight On, which we're going to talk about in the next segment. So Genova, One Winged Angel, of course, FF7 had to be here. The next couple songs on this list are from the game Final Fantasy VII Remake, my first experience with Final Fantasy in general. This is the Valkyrie and the Airbuster. I wanted to talk about the Valkyrie first because I've always felt it was a kind of underrated song. A lot of people don't really talk about it. And to me, it was my favorite part of Remake, is that whole chapter. So in the original game, you are climbing up the rubble of the fallen plate, and it's like this really short section that's probably like 5 minutes long, something like that. And in FF7 Remake, they made a whole chapter on it, and that chapter is really, really cool. It's like evening time, and the lighting is all, pink, and it's just it's my favorite time of the day. I love evenings, so in this game, it looks beautiful. It's kind of a contrast with how you're feeling too, because on one end, there's rubble, destruction, and just turmoil everywhere from what just happened. But at the same time, there's kind of like that glimmer of hope on the horizon with the sunset. And it's really nice, and that whole music section is covered with this kind of guest composer of Kaiki Kobayashi. So the whole time you're getting chased by the Valkyrie, hearing the little dun 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 dun, which then translates and goes right into the boss fight of the Valkyrie. And the reason it's so cool is because Kaiki Kobayashi is the composer people think of when it comes to Ace Combat, which is all flight and dogfighting, so it's like perfect, Kaiki Kobayashi is known for quite a bit of things in the Namco world, like Ace Combat, Tekken, Ridge Racer, and fun fact, this is totally unrelated, but my favorite song from Street Fighter V, which is Fang's theme, is also Kaiki Kobayashi, which sounds nothing like his other work. But the thing about the Valkyries, like I said, is such a cool section, such a great fight. You're forced to use kind of a long-range tactic this time. Barrett's really good here because he's flying in the air. But the music, the stabs of the violins is really good. And I think it does a very good job of giving you this sort of chasing and running away type of feel. And the song has hints of like buzzing, kind of like a bee, if you think about it, like the rotors. So the whole thing is just pretty genius to me. And I love the Valkyrie. It's my favorite song from FF7. Well, I'm not sure. It's my favorite boss song from FF7 Remake. So I had to put it in here. The next song, of course, being the Airbuster, one of the most iconic parts of the entire game. Normally I have some notes to go along with, what to say for these that I experienced. I didn't write anything for the Airbuster because I know as soon as I started talking, which I'm doing now, stuff was just going to come out. And what I can tell you is that first couple months I started doing the reactions, the Airbuster was so requested. It was overwhelming. I had hundreds of requests for the Airbuster. And it is one of the main factors as to why I even decided to play the game. I heard that song and I felt like I went through puberty. It was so amazing. It was during my Christmas special of like my most requested songs. And right before that, I just heard the original version, which is also very good, I should mention, with the organs, and it's just the original Airbuster theme is incredible, but the remake version, I mean, come on, man. It's multiple phases. It's just this epic thing that is just, it goes with the fight so well. I wish the fight was a little harder so I can hear more of the phases, but yeah, it was such a fun time. I love that fight. And, FF7 Remake is definitely like a controversial thing. A lot of people wanted it to be very faithful to the original. And my opinion on that has always been, if you want the original, you can just play the original. And I always saw Remake and Rebirth as a getting more of this world that we love. So why not, So it may not be the popular opinion, but I will say this: if it wasn't for Remake's strong start for me, I wouldn't have played 8 or 9 or even bothered with Rebirth. So it's a very special game for me. And the Airbuster and the Valkyrie are definitely part of that. So I had to feature them here.
Hey everybody, my name is Droogle. I'm a streamer on Twitch. I've been streaming there for over 11 years now, and a big part of my streaming career has been playing my favorite video game series of all time. That's Final Fantasy. So when I was tasked with choosing a boss battle theme that I really connect with, one that I consider to be one of the most iconic, I of course went to my favorite Final Fantasy in the series, and that is Final Fantasy VII. So before we go any further into this, I do want to say that there will be spoilers for Final Fantasy VII OG and also for Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. So the boss battle theme that I want to talk about is Aerith's theme, specifically Aerith's theme White Materia, which plays in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I know some people might be thinking, wait a second, Aerith's theme is not a boss battle theme, but it actually is, and it actually always has been ever since the original 1997 release of Final Fantasy VII. The boss battle theme, Aerith's theme, plays during Jenova Life's battle after the unfortunate death of Aerith. And I remember at that time, even being just 9 years old, that I thought it was really powerful and impactful and different that you had this beautiful yet somber theme play throughout this epic boss battle. Normally I was used to, based on that game previously and any other game that I played, something more action focused, something a little bit more bombastic, like the traditional Jenova theme. So in the lead up to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I of course had a lot of questions. One, of course, I was wondering, are they even going to do Aerith's death? And if they do Aerith's death, how are they going to follow that? Is it going to be Jenova that we fight? Are they going to do the same theme? And so on. And of course, I wanted them to do it, but I wasn't sure that it would work into how it would play out, and if it worked well into how they do boss battle, in the new remake series. So what I think is so special, though, specifically about Aerith's theme, White Materia, and I wasn't disappointed at all with the way they went about it, is how it was woven into the cutscene and how it sort of assists in telling a story. So of course you do get the iconic moment where the white materia bounces from Aerith's hair and it falls into the water. But what follows after that is actually, I think, the more interesting aspect of the song. Aerith's theme, as he's holding her and Sephiroth is talking to Cloud, it turns sort of dark and twisted, and eventually gets taken over entirely by Sephiroth's theme, either One-Winged Angel or those chosen by the planet. And as Sephiroth is sort of twisting the knife in the Cloud, his music is playing and he's enjoying every bit of pain and suffering that he can extract from Cloud in this moment. But then you see Aerith's hand reach up to Cloud's face, and suddenly her theme continues, and it continues right from where it left off too. So she's reaching towards him, and it goes back and forth like this. Sephiroth's music and Aerith's music almost like battling against each other. As Sephiroth is trying to break Cloud entirely, Aerith is literally trying to hold him together in this moment. Or at least a version of Aerith, maybe one from the live stream, is there for Cloud, trying to make sure that he doesn't break entirely. But Sephiroth does break Cloud, specifically when he tells Cloud that he will never be able to see with such clouded eyes. And the music does this wonderful fake out here where you kind of hear Genova's theme building. And at this moment I was like, oh, okay, they're not going to do Aerith's theme like I wanted them to. And I did feel this sort of tinge of disappointment, but then it does this absolutely amazing transition into maybe my favorite version now of Aerith's theme as the battle begins. And it absolutely broke me in that moment, kind of in the same way Cloud is broken. It took me 30 seconds probably before I realized that I was getting absolutely whooped in this battle. Like, I couldn't focus through the tears. So I just paused the game in that moment and I listened to the music and I just sort of took it in. And one of my favorite aspects of the song actually is, and it happens to me continuously as I listen to it now, as I feel like I'm emotionally overcoming the music and ready to jump back into battle and get this thing done, it does this incredible loop back to the beginning, and it breaks me, completely wrecks me all over again. And for that reason, it's one of the most memorable and impactful moments that I've ever had in my 11 years of streaming. So for that reason, I choose Aerith's theme, White Materia, as one of, if not the most iconic boss battle theme in gaming history.
Up next, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VIII. I chose a pair of songs, which is Maybe I'm a Lion and The Extreme, two parts of a three-part final boss fight. And I'm going to be honest with you, as I always am. I don't even remember what the first phase sounded like. To be even more honest, a lot of 8, my memory with 8 is kind of a little shot. For those that don't know, let me catch you up. This is a very controversial game. And just to come right out with it is my least favorite Final Fantasy of all of them. Sorry to, crush some dreams out there, but by default, something has to be like the worst one. But I still enjoyed it. It's just the only game that I ever stopped streaming. But I did finish it off stream on my own, and I enjoyed it more that way. It's a very confusing game, and I'm not here to, talk bad on it. This soundtrack, I've said multiple times, I also made a top 20 for it. This soundtrack is one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard. So it's funny because the game was kind of whatever to me, but soundtrack is one of the most iconic things I've ever heard in my life. It has such a unique sound to it. This jazz, Rhodes piano, spy detective stuff. The chase songs are really good. Dum 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 dum. Zell, the hot dogs, it's all there, right? The handsome memes, the music of this game is it's something else, man. It's really cool. What was that one? Laguna's, it'll come to me, I can't remember right now. The Man with the Machine Gun, right? There's so many. and my favorite song, which people weren't even expecting, the parade one, which I can't remember also. But anyways, Maybe I'm a Lion is the second phase of this final boss fight, which this fight is hard, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I try to like mentally block a lot of this fight because I just kind of wanted to get it over with, and I do remember this fight being pretty challenging. I think the first half was like very RNG based or something like that. And when it comes to this part, it's all of a sudden like, oh yeah, okay, this is really cool. The song changes, it gets into this sort of like almost late 70s kind of dad rock thing, which is amazing and just an iconic song. But the one that I kind of wanted to focus on is the Extreme. It is such an amazing piece of music. It is the first song I ever heard for Final Fantasy VIII, meaning the Extreme was the catalyst as to my interest in even touching FF8. You know, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel after playing 7 or anything like that, but I do remember when I was playing 7 that, oh man, if this was good, imagine, you know, hearing the Extreme for the first time. So, yeah, and that fight was also difficult, but the Extreme. Such a memorable first experience, you know, all the arpeggios everywhere. The energy of the song is substantial. I also want to give a shout out to the Final Fantasy 14 version of the Extreme. I don't remember what it was called, but there is a 14 version, and it sounds really, really, really good. It sounds very faithful. If you haven't heard it, check it out. But yeah, FF8 is just one of these anomalies in my life where it's kind of what I was talking about earlier with, there seems to be a pattern among FF fans on certain games like 8, 13, and now 16, maybe even 12, where like the community is split right down the middle. But we're not here to talk about that. I think we can all agree that the soundtrack, I've never heard anyone say anything bad about the soundtrack of FF8, and that's what I'm focusing on. So music in FF8, incredible. I made a whole video on it, but Maybe I'm a Lion and the Extreme are two humongous standouts.
What's up, everybody? My name is RGG Studios. You can call me Shoop. You can find me at twitch.tv/RGG Studios. I've been streaming on Twitch for about 3 years now. I stream a lot of Final Fantasy, in case you couldn't tell, and a lot of indie games. A little bit about myself. I'm a self-taught pianist. I cannot read music. I listen and I play. I just play by ear. One of my favorite songs of all time from Final Fantasy IX is The Darkness of Eternity, also known as The Dark Messenger. I've tried to play it. I can't play it. I need about 5 hands to be able to play it. Some of the music I grew up with over the years, a lot of Pink Floyd, Metallica, Simon & Garfunkel, Tool, System of a Down, Grateful Dead, Queen, Bob Dylan, you name it. If it's a rock genre, I listen to it. Something that I noticed about Darkness of Eternity is that it kind of gears towards the progressive rock genre. And so I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to be discussing the song, let's look more into progressive rock and what progressive rock is, especially as a Pink Floyd fan. And it's a very broad definition. What I discovered, what I honed into when I was looking at the definition of progressive rock was an obsessive dedication to technical skill. And if there's one thing that Nobuo Uematsu does in The Darkness of Eternity is an incredible showing of technical skill. If you've never played Final Fantasy IX, I highly recommend not listening to what I'm going to say here in a moment because it's going to contain a lot of spoilers. In Final Fantasy IX, you find out that Kuja is actually the main protagonist, Zidane's brother. And towards the end, you realize that the party is fighting because they have everything to lose. And Kuja, who has just discovered his mortality, has nothing to lose. And the song, while it does open with Kuja's theme of Wicked Sorrow, and that does play throughout the song itself, you get this feeling that there's so much fear and sorrow and pain and anger that comes from Kuja, but there's so much lightheartedness in regards to the party fighting to save the world. A lot of determination, perseverance, hope. It's a beautiful mesh of these solemn minor sounds with these hopeful piano pieces that come in about halfway through the song. And the runtime of this, I believe, is about 2 minutes and 44 seconds before it loops. And you are listening to the song for about 1.5 minutes before you get to hear this hopeful piano piece. And as a pianist, of course, I'm going to be drawn to that myself naturally. But there is a beautiful balance of synth and piano, and I cannot stress this enough, how much percussion can set a mood in a song. And that's one thing that Dark Messenger does really well. There are certain parts in the song where there's this interesting part when the piano starts playing, and then this bass synth and the percussion kind of builds it up and then breaks it down. And when it loops back and it reminds you that you're still fighting a boss, it's something that I can't really describe as to why I love it so much, but I do. Something that really, really makes me happy too is that the song really pertains to a magical enemy. Kuja has 0 physical attacks at all. All of his attacks are magical. He uses Flare Star, Holy, Reflect, Hiraga, and Ultima for his finisher when you actually beat him. And the song really encompasses this like magic in music. I don't know. That's the only way I know how to explain it. It's one of those songs for me in gaming where I would rather just sit in wait time. I will go into my menu, select the battle speed as wait rather than active, so I can open a selection menu and just sit there and listen to it over and over and over and over again. And it has such a natural loop that you don't get sick of it. For that, it's one of my favorite songs of all time. And I think it could get a lot of people into the progressive rock genre, as well as into video game music itself.
The next song I'm going to be talking about is Fight with Seymour from Final Fantasy X. Probably the song I know the least about in this segment because I've never played this game. Although I will say there is a very good chance I play this game for the first time this year in 2025. We'll see. It's backlogged, so I didn't want to look up anything, of course. I've avoided so much stuff about this game for years now that I'm surprised I haven't been spoiled. But all I can tell you is when I first heard this song, incredible again, like Nobuo Matsu does. I really love this like prog thing of it. Everything I've heard from 10 has been pretty cool. You know, Wandering Flame, the intro song, Xanark, and it definitely has caught my ear's attention. But I don't know anything about this game. I just know that there's a main character who laughs really weird, and there's a Blitzball, whatever that is. But I love the Fight with Seymour song. I can't wait to find out more about it. Like maybe there's motifs throughout the game or something. We'll see. Hopefully no one spoils anything. But yeah, the one I know the least about, but there's still one more FF song we have to talk about. In a game that has hundreds, if not thousands, of boss themes, I had to choose one, but I think it was an obvious choice for me or anyone that knows how I have dealt with Final Fantasy XIV, and that is Wrath of the Harrier, my favorite song from 14, which also happens to be Nobuo Matsu. So I remember hearing this song amidst all the 14 stuff I've heard, and there's so many good boss themes in this game that it's nearly impossible to do this. But like I said, I've always known this is my favorite, so yeah, I kind of knew instantly. As a huge Nobuo fan, I've also seen the footage with the Diablo armament. It looks really cool, kind of reminds me of Jenova, this huge like dragon serpent looking thing. And I love how the background is just like black, so it looks very ominous. But the song is just fantastic. The bass, the rhythmic section, the guitar. In fact, I like a song when I learn it on guitar myself, right? It doesn't happen all the time. I learned it, uploaded it to the channel, and not even that. I show you guys how to play it. I did a tutorial on it, a very simple. It's not the easiest song to play. It's like intermediate to advanced, but I did a whole tutorial with tabs. I love this song. Wrath of the Harrier is so cool. If there was ever a chance of me playing this game, which is like this, by the way, one of the first things I want to do his experience Wrath of the Harrier. It's so cool. It's so cool. I love it. 14 is its own thing, right? It's an MMO. It's such a huge fan base. I don't think it's ever going to go away. And it's probably my biggest fan base on this channel still. Most of my mods are 14 players. And, you know, funny enough, a lot of my favorite songs from 14 are Nobuo Uematsu songs. But Wrath of the Harrier is, whew, man. It's just so good. But that concludes my Final Fantasy segment and all the segments. Now we're moving on to kind of the last couple songs here, which are sort of unsorted, so to say.
That's a nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Hi, my name is Jamie Christopherson, and I'm the composer for Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. In the game, I had to write about 12 or 13 big major boss battle music, focusing on the kind of characteristics of each boss, and every one of them had lyrics and vocalists, original vocalists, and massive metal kind of beats and things like that. But each one of them had to be specific to each boss. It's kind of hard to pick my favorite one, but let's focus on the one that generated like all the memes, which is Senator Armstrong. So that was a lot of fun to write. I can remember there was 2 songs, so they're split up. The first song being Collective Consciousness, when the boss like is still in the mech suit, and it's kind of wild fight, and it's talking all about you know, mind control and things like that. And I just remember just kind of going all out in that song. It's so much fun to just kind of make something really gritty and in that triplet kind of beat. Then of course, after you beat him at that stage, you kind of have an interlude of some more crazy talking, you know, very meme stuff on the internet. You know, his dialogue is insane there. So we tried to make the music match that insanity and like how crazy and over the top it is. Yeah, so that was a favorite. And then of course the second part of that song is It Has to Be This Way, which is kind of written from Armstrong's view, but also Raiden's point of view. It's people keep asking like, whose point of view is this written from? But we had to kind of keep it a little bit nebulous. So it's like, it's both of them coming to the realization that through war and things like that, there's common ground. And that song was so much fun because it was the kind of culmination of all the other boss battles. We have orchestra, heavy metal stuff, really cinematic. And that was a lot of fun to write. It's probably the longest boss battle song. And it's just kind of, yeah, it's the culmination of all the other boss stuff that I'd worked on until that point. It was one of the last boss battle themes that I worked on. I co-wrote it with a great heavy metal producer named Logan Mader, and we just had a ton of fun doing that. And a singer named Jimmy Neko, who just nailed it out of the park. And we just had a ton of fun on it. So that is my probably favorite boss stuff, is the combination of both those 2 songs. And of course I'm a huge fan of bosses in video games, and so it was a lot of fun to do that.
Up next we have The Battle for Everyone's Souls, otherwise known as Battle Hymn of the Soul, from Persona 3, a very special song to me. I've never played a Persona game, but I've heard many songs from this series. It is probably my second most popular community with requests and just the viewership in general. I can see why, or I can hear why. Persona music is just kind of its own subject, really. And I didn't even know this was a boss theme until I started doing research for this video. And so I don't even know where this plays or anything. I kind of keep my knowledge of Persona in check because I never know if I'm going to play this game. You know, it's been this kind of topic of debate for years now. Is Jesse ever going to play Persona? I'll tell you this though, and this is just me being honest. I've never announced this anywhere, but since playing Shin Megami Tensei 5, which was my first Atlas experience, all I can say now is, who knows? Because, you know, that first impression was strong in SMT. So if I ever do play Persona, you can thank SMT. But anyways, I don't know any of the context here. I just know it's one of my favorite songs. This is such a good song, especially for guitar players like myself. Another song that I learned, and it is the last song I heard and learned in my old crummy apartment. So it's nice looking back on that video and seeing just how far I've come from that, you know, like sharing a space with losers to just living on my own because of you guys. It's really cool to look back on that stuff. And of course the song just has just everything I love. The vocals, the amazing piano break. It's just memorable. I love this song. Apparently it is kind of a reoccurring motif, something about the Velvet Room or something like that. I don't know anything about Persona, but of course I had to put the song in here, and I really hope it's a boss theme, because if not, then it's going to be very awkward. But either way, Persona had to be on here. And speaking of Persona, move on. Very similar to the last entry of Persona 3, we have Persona 5 with a couple of songs, Rivers in the Desert and Yaldabaoth. I think also pronounced as Yaldabaoth. I wanted to talk about the impact that Rivers in the Desert had, similar to kind of the Airbuster during my Christmas special. I also did Rivers in the Desert. Can you imagine hearing the Airbuster and Rivers in the Desert in the same day? That Christmas day for me was nuts. I also heard Metal Gear Rising in that day too. Crazy day. Merry Christmas to me. Rivers in the Desert was one of my most, I don't keep track of these things, but it was one of my most requested songs ever. Ever. Dancing Mad was up there. Rivers in the Desert was up there. I can't even remember them all, but it was up there. For good reason. You know, we have the power voice of Lyn. Not the first song I heard from Persona 5. I had Wake Up, Get Out There, so I had that kind of feeling to go with it. But Rivers in the Desert was something else, man. I remember that day like it was yesterday, because it was kind of evening time, and there was a car crash that happened right outside my window. And I don't remember, but I think there's times in that video where you see me kind of like look outside. I don't remember, but I do remember that day. Such an incredible song. The fact that it's a boss theme, which I also didn't know until much later, really intrigues me, because I'm trying to imagine like the feelings leading up to that. Like I said before, Persona has always been this game where, you know, I don't want people to try to convince me to play. I have to want to play it naturally, because why would you want to watch someone, you know, reluctantly play something? All I've said in the past is that it just hasn't appealed to me because of there's a lot of talking and the whole school and romancing thing and the heavy emphasis on reading, or like it's kind of like mostly a visual novel with some gameplay. It just hasn't really like caught my attention. But maybe, you know, every day I get like a tiny little fraction closer to maybe like trying it. Also the length of it scares me. So anyways, but hearing stuff like this and getting so curious as to why or how it plays in the game is just so exciting. Every game I've ever played since starting the auditorium has been through curiosity of its music. Every single one. And I'm not gonna lie, Persona 5 has been way up there as far as like my requests, and has such amazing music. And I've heard this one in the live version she does too, and she's just such an incredible performer, both live and in studio. It's overwhelming. But definitely one of my favorite songs I ever heard on the channel and in my general day-to-day life. Rivers in the Desert is amazing. A little bit of a whiplash with the next song, Yaldabaoth, is the most recent song I heard in Persona 5. This one was requested and suggested as well, and had kind of like a voting phase. And to be totally honest, as per usual, when I say these things, some people can take it the wrong way, but I'm just, by default, something has to be kind of like lower ranked than other stuff. This was probably my least favorite song from Persona 5. But even then, it still had some amazing parts in it. I don't know how to explain that, but basically, which apparently this is the final boss too, which is even more bizarre to me. the intro to the song is something, you know, but for me, like the main takeaway is the chorus. The chorus is so good in the song that it kind of it salvaged the song for me. And to give you an idea of how much it salvaged it, even though it was requested and voted for, I almost didn't even put it in the video because I didn't want to. But seriously, that chorus is so strong that it carried it to me. And this is I think it's gonna be one of those songs that might just grow on me. Maybe not, but there has been, in fact, there's been cases of Atlas songs where I did not like them, and then I played them in game, and then I liked them. So it could happen. All I'm saying is, out of all the Persona 5 stuff I've heard, Child of Both is just probably my least favorite, and it seems to be kind of a common thing in the comments. Like a lot of people were saying this was kind of underwhelming and a OST full of bangers, but it's kind of like pizza to me. Like even the worst pizza is still pizza. So the song is still very good. It's just not my favorite when it comes to Persona 5, which is funny being alongside of Rivers in the Desert. So with that being said, we are coming to the last song, and unlike other VGM vibes where I have like honorable mentions, there's no honorable mentions. And one big thing to take away from this is in every episode prior to this, the last song of the video is always the one that inspired the entire video. That is not the case here. The next song is not even my favorite song on this list. I don't have a favorite song on this list, except for maybe Dark Colossus from NieR. But you know what I mean? Like there was no ranking here. It's impossible. It's just I had to pick something to go at the end. So that's all I wanted to say about that one. But yeah, Persona 5, amazing. We move on to the last song of this list. The final song I'll be featuring in VGM Vibes 9 is Make This Right from the game Fury for the boss called The Song, composed by the Toxic Avenger, who also streams on Twitch as Tox Avenger. This game is loaded with bosses. In fact, it's all bosses. It's just a boss rush game. You can beat it in maybe half a day. It's like 5 or 6 hours long. Every song has their own, every boss has their own song, and they're all like each better than the last. And it's a conglomerate of composers. And it's similar to, if you're familiar with Hotline Miami. In fact, one of the composers from Hotline Miami does music in this game as well. And it's just such a good time, you know. As much fun as I had with this game, I only had one complaint, and it was a big one, which is the main dash mechanic. You get used to it, and I think some people don't even mind it, but it's the one thing that kind of prevented me from like revisiting the game. Is this, it just feels kind of like unresponsive, but I still had fun with it. And it's challenging, you know, kind of like action / bullet hell style of game. I never played a game like that. And one thing that I really enjoyed upon reaching this boss is when you talk to her on the bench, is if you keep listening to the dialogue and just kind of sit there for a while, the game will just end right here and the credits will roll. I love when games do that, you know, they kind of like find an Easter egg way of ending it. But of course, most players just go through the dialogue and then eventually go into this boss fight, which is really fun. And yeah, just like I said earlier, this isn't even my favorite song on here. It's still an incredible song. It hits super hard. And choosing a favorite amongst all these is somewhat difficult, to put it lightly. And something had to go here at the end. And I think Fury deserves its flowers. It is an incredible game with incredible music. And that's my pick. Thus concludes episode 9 of VGM Vibes, the boss themes, a huge undertaking, took a long time. I hope you guys had fun. There's a lot of songs that didn't make it, of course. There's so many boss themes in the world, including songs that I wanted to put on here and songs that you guys wanted. But like I said, when we return to this theme, that'll be almost entirely community-based, so I await that. A big thank you to all the guests that appeared. I really appreciate their time and effort to be a part of this. Check out their channels, follow their streams, all that good stuff. It was an honor. I will see you in the 10th episode of this series, which is hard to believe, and that'll be love themes in the month of February. Thank you to all the patrons, the voters, suggesters. I couldn't be here without you guys. My name is Jesse. In the auditorium, I will see you later.